Kathy. Welcome to the Colorful Homeschooler Podcast, where we parlay on productivity, personality, passions, education, and theory. I'm a lover of Jesus, a wife of 20 years, and a homeschool mama of 4 special needs boys who keep me constantly active. I'm so glad you're here to join me. Pull up a chair. There's space for you at this table. Hi, all. Welcome back to our series on notebooking in a Charlotte Mason homeschool. Today, we're going to be handling language arts notebooks. So last week, we handled nature notebooking and the scaffolded structure that she offered for the nature notebook and science notebooks. So please go back and check out that episode if you missed it. It is a great entry. Let's go into her philosophy on language arts notebooking now. So you may have studied her reading method, and I love it, but that's not what today is about. Today's specifically about what exactly are the language arts notebooks that she wrote about, that she recommended, and that she used while she was teaching. This is important in your homeschool because I want you to make these your own. But in order to make them your own, you need to understand where you're coming from. The best way to understand any of Charlotte Mason is to read her volumes. And I know I didn't say that in the last episode, but my goodness, is it true? Because then you're getting it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. But I have read her volumes. I do teach locally on Charlotte Mason topics as well as other homeschooling topics, and I'm part of a board that reaches out to our community with Charlotte Mason philosophy. So I do surround myself with her philosophy, but my goodness, I do my own personal interpretation, as you will as well. So read the volumes whenever you get a chance. Maybe that's a fun summer project. I don't know. Okay, so it began with early printing, and these would just be called copybooks. They would have a short sentence at the top, and it would just be working on the aspect of the fine motor skill of printing. Next would be a poetry book. Now, there is some question about whether this was truly used as the first copybook or its own thing. However, it would be a collection of the students' favorite verses of poetry, and this is talked about in Home Education on page 243. The whole poem would stale, were Charlotte's exact words, and doesn't that make sense? I know my little would never be able to copy the whole poem at under 9 years old. Forget it. So pick his or her favorite verse of poetry from whichever poet you're studying, and that can be the copywork. Copywork encompasses grammar, it encompasses printing, it encompasses vocabulary. All of these very language arts important aspects are encompassed by copywork. So, is the poetry book the first copybook, or was it its own thing? We don't know. But what we do know is that she only had students copy their favorite verse. Next would be the motto book, or the student yearbook. I did not do it, but we have talked already about starting it for next year. You see, I went into a deep dive of research for this episode and a class I taught locally recently. So I read Lori Bestfader's book, which I will link in the show notes, as well as return to some of the volumes to try and get Charlotte's true own words on the aspect of her notebooks. So a motto book or a student yearbook. The student, again, would choose a motto for every day, culled from their own reading, their own listening. And the quote is, "Not busy work. Rather, it is an intentional practice with much more profitable implication. This is meditative copywork for each day. Therefore, the ideas that inspire them are thought about while they slowly copy." And Charlotte Mason also called this a reflective journal. Now, why would it be called a student yearbook? Because the idea was that they would choose a motto, quote unquote, for every day of the year. So the first year you do it, obviously you wouldn't have one every day. But the idea is that perhaps they are making their next year journal, or are they creating their journal for this year? That's the question. There is a quote later on that references looking anew at the quote which stopped them in their tracks last year. So in that case, they are actually writing one down every day, and then the following year, they are now looking at that again. Are they copying it again? I'm not sure. But that is now their yearbook. That is their daily quote, their daily motto. That's very exciting to me because I know how much quotes and scriptures speak to my heart differently from year to year. So this gives the child agency in what they are going to look at, what's going to touch their heart. Next, we will talk about a fortitude journal. So the child, not the mom or the dad, the child identifies a character trait they want to work on in themselves. And they set to work to notice passages on this trait, scriptures, character passages on the trait. These are important, and they copy them into a fortitude journal. This must be from the child's heart. We shouldn't, quote unquote, from Charlotte, paint the moral. So that's important. We shouldn't, quote unquote, from Charlotte, point the moral. This is not us teaching them. This is them gaining agency over something they want to work on within themselves. What an incredible skill, and one that can sometimes sorely be lacking in today's world. Set your children up to recognize things that they need to work on in themselves and find biblical, godly, literary examples of people who can help them with this. Either show them what is wrong or point them towards the right, and then they copy those specific quotes in a fortitude journal. There was probably a movement from the poetry book to the motto book to the fortitude journal. Now, a fortitude journal should only be begun after ages of 15 or 16. So in a true age of maturity for the child. You don't want your 9-year-old coming up with a fortitude journal because at that point we are still pointing the moral. We have to. They're young. And of course, yes, you're still teaching your children morality and values at 15 or 16, but they should have some agency of their own at this point for picking out what they need to work on. So this is an older age journal, the fortitude journal. So that's the movement from the poetry book to the motto book to the fortitude journal. Very exciting. Next, let's go into commonplace books. This would begin in middle and would continue all through high school. So Form 3 and above. This needs to be personalized. It crosses subjects. This is just a record of their reading and learning. Now, let me explain what a commonplace book is. I keep one of these, and I mentioned it in my episode, All the Paper We Cannot Store, which I will link in the show notes. Now, a commonplace book has been kept since antiquity by many great men and women, and this is literally just a writing down of quotes that touch you. These can be quotes that are overheard in person, something someone says to another person that stops you and makes you think and reflect, goes in the commonplace book. This can be scriptures, amazing scriptures that speak to the heart of the matter. Put them in the commonplace book. These can be beautiful lines of poetry. Put it in the commonplace book. This can be Shakespeare quotes or historical novel quotes or nonfiction quotes. Put them in the commonplace book. Every person's commonplace book is different than every next person. No person is going to find every quote the same level of interest as the next person. So these are a very personalized record of learning. And I love mine. I love looking back at it. I love being re-inspired by some of the things I wrote down. And I'll be honest, sometimes I reread some of my quotes in my commonplace book and I'm like, why the heck did I write that down? But at that time, it was meaningful and inspiring to me. So it will be again. I believe that. There's an essay by Joan Didion called On Notebooking or On the Notebook, something like that. It's about keeping a commonplace book and what notebooking means to her. And I love that through the short essay, it's only like 6 pages. It's available online for free because it's in the open market now. And at one point, towards the end, she reflects and says, the reason that I have kept a notebook is not because I like to reflect on what the other person said, but because I know how I see myself in what they said. And she has memories of herself reading it or herself overhearing it, and how that grounds her and keeps her focused on what is inspiring and beautiful. And doesn't this harken back to what we talked about with nature journaling, right? The untrained eye doesn't see the beauty, doesn't see the glory of God in all the different landscapes. The untrained ear doesn't remember themselves being inspired. But the trained ear remembers the inspiration. Not for everything. Like I said, there are some quotes I'm like, why did I write that down? But for almost everything, I am re-inspired as I read my commonplace book. So what a gift to hand your child. I love that notebook. So those are the language arts notebooks. Now, there are other subject notebooks that are referenced, but some questions remained. These are referred to offhandedly in her writings or in exams that are written down from the PNEU schools. For example, there's a music notebook referenced. Was the biography of the musician narrated within that notebook? Was it just selections of their music that were almost like copywork? We're not so sure. Yes, lines of the songs were definitely in there because in the exam it mentions from your music notebook, these lines were copied, tell the story of 2 of the songs. So we know that they copied lines of songs, but what else was in the music notebook? Was it its own notebook or was it joined with other notebooks? We're not sure, but again, make the philosophy work for you. Next was a travel diary. The travel diary was noticing as you go places. This was how she wrote the Ambleside geographies, was by writing these travel diaries herself. And this is basically a traveling nature notebook. The nature notebook was often talked about staying within a certain place or going to the same place over and over again. I did not do that. I wound up going all over my beautiful state, and I took my normal nature notebook with me on campouts that were far away from my house. This is up to you. The true level of the philosophy was that the nature notebook was only for a specific location, and then the travel diary would be for anything further out or far away from that original location. But philosophy works for you. You don't work for the philosophy. So all of mine and my children went in one. So travel diary, nature notebook, that was the idea behind it. That was how she wrote Ambleside geographies. Another subject notebook that was mentioned is the Bible notebook. And within it is referenced that there would be narrations, maps, copywork, as well as an order and progression. Does that mean a timeline? Does that mean a new understanding of the subject matter? Make it your own, because it was not fully defined. However, the fact that she has narrations, maps, copywork of scriptures, and an order speaks to me of the gospel story, unfolding throughout the pages of history and scripture together. I love that. So we have kept a Bible notebook without knowing that this was the type of thing we were doing. We just finished Revelation. My son's graduating this year. And I love the fact that we just finished Revelation, and the Bible notebook that they have kept encompasses the entire Bible. We didn't do copywork of scriptures in there, but we did do narrations. We do have maps, and there is some order and progression because we've gone through all the books of the Bible. How exciting. It is never too late to start. Another one that is discussed for language arts is a My Word book. And this was very interesting. I did not do this, and I don't wish I had, because I am happy with most of the things that we did when my children were younger, but I do think it sounds like a wonderful practice. So a My Word book, each word a beginning reader can read is written down in this little notebook, showing them the words that they quote unquote now possess. And as that notebook grows and grows and grows, eventually they won't need it anymore. But what a cute little keepsake for them. These were the words that you read first, by sight and by sounding out. So it's a beginner reader copying down of the words that they now possess, the words they can read. Also referenced is a French notebook, which the teacher keeps. And this is the same idea as a My Word book. The oral to the printed word is how we learn. So you would learn the word orally, and the teacher would write it down in the My Word book so that the child would be able to see the way that it looks in French. Although he doesn't yet know how to write it, he knows that word, and now he sees how the French letters make different sounds than English letters. He can start to begin seeing the French language. And again, as they learn more and more words, does this stop? This was a question I did encounter. Or does the student take over when they begin writing the other language? Or do they then begin their own French notebook at that point? Make it your own. Also, there was the parent yearbook. Now, the parent yearbook notices the child's character needs. This is similar to the Fortitude Journal, where the child is noticing their own character issues, but in the parent yearbook, the parent is writing down the child's character needs and then reflecting on your teaching as the parent. What methods have you gone over? What books have you read in reference to this character difficulty? How has the child grown? Even those baby steps that I know I am not the only mama that feels like nothing ever gets better with this certain character flaw. And then when I look back at maybe a journal entry of my own in my own quiet time journal, when I look back and I see what I was praying for, I'm like, oh, he doesn't do that anymore. Huh. Well, if I had ever kept a parent yearbook, I probably would have noticed that. So really good practice to get into. Reflect on your teaching and how it meets that character need and how you are growing as well. Perhaps the character need is not fully in your child, but also in yourself and the way you're parenting it. Also brought up was an Inquire Within or a household book. This was also kept by the mother, and these were very, very common in Victorian England, all the way up through the 1950s, actually. And these were the mother's exact ways of doing everything. It included etiquette, parlor games, recipes, laundry tips, holiday preparations, first aid, cleaning methods, and life hacks. This was a specific, practical narration of the mothers. So, pretty cool. Then they were able to then pass that to, say, someone who was coming into the home to help. But I thought of it, if I had kept one, as what a beautiful gift for your daughter when she gets married, or for your son's wife when he gets married. That is a precious thing to pass on. So that was called the Inquire Within or the Household Book. Thank you so much for listening today to the Language Arts and Subject Notebook episode of my Charlotte Mason notebooking series. Now, next week, I will finish the series off with our social studies, historical, geographical notebooks, and talk about everybody's favorite book of centuries. Let's meet again here on Tuesday. New episodes every week. Please like, follow, and share, and please check me out on Instagram and be a follower. I love sharing engaging content, and I really try to encourage homeschool mamas on my Instagram, so please come follow me. Come back next week. Let me know anything you want to hear from me, and please leave me a written review. It really helps the algorithm push me out further. Thank you so much, ladies. And again, I believe in you.